In 1620, while the Mayflower was in Provincetown, 18 of its men sailed in a small shallop, searching for a place to live. They came to present-day Eastham, where they were met by a group of Nauset. After a brief but violent encounter, the English left towards today's Plymouth. In 2020, we remember this first encounter. We explore its meanings for today and tomorrow.
The following text is an excerpt from Chapter 4 of Ian Saxine's book, The Story of the First Encounter at Nauset. Chapter 4 is titled Paths from Nauset. By a strange twist of fate, the next time English people traveled to Nauset, they did so to recover one of their own, a boy named John Billington, who had gotten lost in the woods in June 1621. By this time, the English had learned that the Nauset had been victims of Thomas Hunt's kidnapping scheme in 1614, and remained much incensed and provoked against the English. Now the English had to ask them for help retrieving one of their loved ones. In the neighboring village of Cummaquid, on their journey to Nauset, the party of 10 Englishmen met an old woman who had lost 3 of her sons to Hunt, and left her with none to comfort in her final years. The very sight of English people caused her to break into tears. The English apologized and gave her gifts for atonement. More would be needed at Nauset. The English party entered into delicate negotiations through an interpreter to Squantum, commonly known as Squanto, a Patuxet who had been among the people kidnapped by Hunt, and through a mixture of luck and his own resourcefulness made his way back home. The English met a man, name unrecorded, whose corn they had taken, and promised restitution. Aspinet, sachem of the Nauset, came out to Englishmen's shallop beached on the shore, accompanied by 100 men, John Billington in tow. Such a show of strength let the English know that Aspinet chose to return the boy, and was not compelled to do so, demonstrating both his humanity and his power. The boy wore beads the Nauset had given him, and in exchange the English gave a knife to Aspinet, and another to the Nauset who had found Billington. The exchange formed the basis of peace between the Nauset and the Plymouth colonists. The first meeting of the English and Nauset after the first encounter was brief, but it marked the beginning of a transformation. Before it, the Nauset had been among the most implacable foes of the English. Afterwards, and for the rest of the 17th century, Cape Cod residents would experience less violence than most people in New England. The relatively bloodless relations between the early residents of Eastham and their indigenous neighbors did not mean that the gradual English dispossession of native people didn't happen on the Cape, but the physical remoteness of the Cape from the rest of New England gave the Nauset and other native communities there more options in dealing with English colonists. To greater extent than elsewhere in New England, the Nauset were able to keep their community intact by forming a new one nearby at Mashpee. Migrations and crises originating far away still influenced life on the Cape, but the story of the founding of Eastham is one of local adaptation and resilience. Until 1643, few colonists returned to Nauset, and still fewer wrote about it, so we know little about what happened there in detail. We do know that the Nauset were aware of events around the town of Plymouth, paying close attention to what they portended for Cape residents. After a difficult winter that killed half of them, the surviving Plymouth colonists entered into an alliance with Osamoquin Massasoit. Both sides needed allies, and the colonists needed food. For the new governor, William Bradford, and other separatists, disappointments came as thick as successes during the first decade of colonization. Plymouth survived, but few separatists joined them. Rumors of a conspiracy among native people led to Plymouth dispatching Miles Standish as the head of a small force to assassinate the supposed ringleaders near present-day Quincy. His men slew 7 Massachusetts Indians and brought the head of one, Wet'suwet'en, back to Plymouth, where it was prominently displayed atop a new fort as grim warning to potential foes. Edward Winslow, who knew the Wampanoag better than most colonists, claimed in his account justifying the raid that afterwards news of it frightened would-be conspirators on Cape Cod so badly that they fled their villages to take shelter in swamps, where many died of disease, including Aspinet. The separatist, still absent minister, John Robinson, wrote to share his disapproval, doubting the necessity of the killing. especially of killing so many. Besides, Robinson reflected, where blood is once begun to be shed, it is seldom stanched in a long time after. The minister never did take up the post his congregation in Plymouth kept open for him, dying in 1625. The entire colony, including non-separatists, numbered perhaps 300 people in 1630. The outside world stepped in once again in 1630 to dramatically tip the balance of power in the region away from Native Americans. Beginning that year, a flood of godly yet non-separatist colonists began to arrive in Massachusetts Bay, their first arrivals in a 20,000-person Great Migration of Puritans to New England. The non-separatist Massachusetts Bay Colony achieved far more success in attracting enough willing participants to build a society devoted to carrying out a true Reformation in North America. Ironically, most of the towns found in the Plymouth colony after 1630 were established by Massachusetts residents, including some who did not wish to fully conform to the rigid Bay Colony Puritan vision. This included Cape Cod predecessors of Eastham, like Sandwich, Barnstable, and Yarmouth. In Sandwich, a minister complained about the presence of residents who were transported with their fancies to the rejecting of all churches and ordinances. The Bay Colony soon spawned offshoots in Connecticut, New Haven, New Hampshire, and Maine, while sending extremists who challenged Puritan orthodoxy packing to Rhode Island, founded by the exiled radical Roger Williams in 1636. The year after Williams established his haven, or according to many of his neighbors, cesspool, of toleration, colonial forces crushed the Pequot of present-day Connecticut, who had defied the demands of allied New England colonies to turn over accused killers of a colonial traitor. A combined force of colonists and indigenous enemies of the Pequot set fire to their major village in Mystic. The entire village population, hundreds of men, women, and children, died in the flames or at the hands of the surrounding force as they fled. The massacre demonstrated the growing power of the English colonists, which only increased in the wake of a smallpox epidemic that tore through Native communities in 1633 through 34. Then, in 1643, all New England colonies except Rhode Island formed an alliance for protection against potential indigenous foes. Even as their relative power against the English colonists waned, Native Americans remained in substantial numbers on the Cape, and they continued to form the majority of the population there for decades to come. Eastham remained a colonial beachhead surrounded by Nauset and other Wampanoag for many years, and the fact helps explain Anglo-Native relationships there. The Nauset knew the risk of military confrontation with Plymouth, and Eastham colonists' remote locations from the centers of English populations and power meant that they and their property could be attacked long before any relief could come. As a result, Nauset and newcomers lived under a sort of mutually assured destruction for much of the 17th century. As the only town outside of Plymouth founded by separatists, Eastham was exceptional. But for the surviving oldcomers among the Plymouth Church, the town's founding in 1644 represented a failure. To borrow a 21st century term, the separatists in Plymouth had intended to form an intentional community, in this case one which they could nurture a new true church, maintaining the bonds of godly association and discipline. They had already failed to attract enough fellow separatists to dominate the colony, but the town of Plymouth, at least, could remain a godly bulwark. The foundation of Eastham represented a major setback in their struggle to keep the church together. As had happened so often before, worldly demands intruded upon a godly enterprise. William Bradford lamented the straightness and bareness of the lands around Plymouth, prompting numerous residents to seek greener pastures elsewhere in the most literal sense of the phrase. Hoping to keep the remainder together, the Plymouth congregation cast about for a suitable new location for a more prosperous town. The delegation included Bradford himself, as well as former and future Governor Thomas Prince, thought Nauset to be a promising spot. But after an initial purchase from the Nauset, more on that below, realized that no more than 25 English households could live there. It was also, as Bradford observed, 50 miles from Plymouth, and at an outside of the country and remote from all society. To Bradford's great disappointment, 7 families who made the purchase, Prince, Doane, Snow, Cook, Higgins, Smalley, and Bangs, decided to go anyway, leaving the rest of the congregation in Plymouth. And thus the poor church left, like an ancient mother, grown old and forsaken, her children, lamented Bradford in his later account of the episode.
My name is Joanna Hollick. I'd like to share an invitation with you regarding Eastham 400's other series, the Campfire Series. The Campfire Series is a series of hour-long presentations each Sunday in July and August that delve more deeply into some of the topics that we discuss here on the Sunset Series. I am happy to announce that our last campfire will be held in person. On Sunday, August 30th, this presentation will take place at the Eastham Windmill at 6 p.m. The same presentation that was given on August 16th will be given again, featuring John Hanlon of the Cape Cod National Seashore, who has run the campfire programs there for the past 20 years, and Linda Coombs of the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe. Admission is free, but registration is required. You can sign up for these events using a form on our website, www.eastham400.org. We are looking forward to this event, and we hope to see you there.